It's a tale as old as time itself. First you draw a circle, then you dot the I's, add a great big smile, and presto! It's Kirby! Kirby and the Forgore Land is coming out real soon, and Elden Ring can take a hike. Today I will be celebrating 30 years of Kirby by ranking all 30 games in the entire series. This was very difficult, and it took hours of just debating with myself, switching things around, rethinking, rejustifying. I'm hoping I don't upset too many people with this because, as they say, there are no bad Kirby games. But some of them are a little, let's get started. Omissions. Kirby's Toy Box, a Satellaview exclusive aka now unplayable minigame collection that barely counts as a game anyway. Kirby right back at ya. It's an anime. Kirby Slide. It's literally just a slide puzzle. Kirby and the Magical Tower of Metal Land. I don't know, some arcade machine. No. Kirby's Dream Collection Special Edition. It's a collection. It doesn't count. Kirby board game from Wendy's. What? No. What is this? No, that doesn't count either. Okay, let's go. Disclaimers. I will not be ranking remakes separately, as pretty much all Kirby remakes are the same game with more stuff, and it's all very nice, but it's usually not enough to bump them up the ranking anyway. And finally, before you fight me on opinions, know that I've 100% completed every single one of these games, and it's way harder to do that for some of these games than others. I've experienced the absolute best and worst that every Kirby entry has to offer, and I can confidently say this list shows which games deliver a better Kirby experience, and which games are more lacking in that regard. But they're all pretty darn fun, so without further ado, number 30. Kirby's Avalanche is another one of those Puyo Puyo reskins, just like that Mean Bean Machine. There's 10 single-player levels, and that's it. It's not a Kirby game. There's really not much else to say. But it does have voice acting.
What'll do? Squishy.
Lo 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 and la la la.
Meta night.
King day day day. Crack!
Kirby's Star Stacker gets some points for being an original puzzle game that's decently fun. Unfortunately, there's about as much content here as in Avalanche. There's no single player campaign, it's just a challenge mode that goes on for way too long. Like I said, it's decently fun, but it gets old real quick. You're forced to rely on these randomly generated rows that come in faster and faster for your combos, but so you really don't have any ability to set up the big combos because it's all random, so it just starts to feel very luck-based. And that's because it is. What if Kirby was a ball? Many games have attempted to ask this question, but the first was Kirby's Pinball Land. It's pinball. You might be seeing a pattern with these bottom three. These are just games that could easily exist without Kirby and also won't hold your attention for very long. Pinball Land is fun for as long as you can explore these 3 tables. If you can manage to quote-unquote beat them, you can actually fight DDD as a boss, but when you beat him, it just spits you back to the beginning. There's not much here. It's kind of fun. Let's jump out of the 90s a second, skip ahead to 2020. I'm putting Kirby Fighters 2 right here. Of all the Kirby sub-games to get a ramped-up sequel, Kirby Fighters was the least interesting. The concept of a Smash Bros. Game made of only Kirby copy abilities is kinda fun, but I really think the extent of the concept had been fully explored by this point, and for $20, this sequel promises a story mode, which is just a series of random fights and then a boss at the end, which is literally what the game already was. And aside from that, they've added more abilities and stages, but the problem is, this game does nothing to establish itself as a fighting game. It controls exactly as any normal Kirby game controls. Kirby is not a fighting game. You see the problem here? This was harmless when it was just a little original game and it was super cheap, but this version asks for too much of your money and way too much of your time for essentially the same thing. Sticking with the overpriced and empty games, we have Kirby Battle Royale. This was yet another tease of Kirby going 3D, but still not being a normal Kirby game. It's similar to Fighters 2, but it's more fun because you're using these copy abilities in a new 3D setting. It's also more than just a fighting game, it's a party game. The minigames are actually really fun and stressful, and if they put this on a home console, it would probably rank much higher on this list. But you ain't getting that local multiplayer fun on 3DS, you're just not. And online mode, naturally, is pretty much unplayable. So the game you're left with is another story mode that leaves you feeling empty after just a few hours. It's crazy how much potential Kirby has for home console party games, and Nintendo just won't do it because of that stupid Mario. Also, never forget that this costed more money than Triple Deluxe, which is an actual Kirby game. I'm still salty about that. Time for what's probably the rarest game on this list. Never released outside of Game Boy Color, it's... Using advanced early 2000s sensor technology, this is a whole game played with almost no button input, only tilting, only tumbling. And as a result, this is one of those games that isn't much more than its gimmick. It can be very frustrating and picky at times, so collecting all the red stars for 100% is a true pain in the neck. Literally. Let me show you how this game needs to be played. If you don't calibrate it on a perfect flat line with your face parallel, Kirby is going to be bouncing off the walls. Or more realistically, falling off the cliff. It's the only game on this list to cause you physical harm. And yet, it's still number 25. That's not bad. It's weird talking about these games out of order, but I do believe Kirby Fighters Deluxe is a more valuable game than its sequel. Why? Because they're basically the same games, but this one's only $7. By the time you get your fill of this game, you're pretty much done, and you don't feel like you wasted any time or money. Like I said earlier, there was not enough potential here to go beyond this game. It's just simply not that fun. But I really do miss when we got these tiny eShop Kirby games. There's value to small and cheap games. I don't care if Nintendo doesn't think so anymore. This may be the least interesting of the sub-games from the two 3DS entries, but it's still fun for a bit. From one sub-game to the next, I have a bad relationship with Team Kirby Clash Deluxe and its sequel, Super Kirby Clash. Super might as well be a remake, so I'm ranking them together. These are free-to-start games where you choose the role of Hammer, Doctor, Swordman, or Mage, and you fight bosses for the best score. Now, of course, these games get docked points for the mobile game monetization. But as long as you put a little money in, you will permanently gain more gems on a daily basis and can experience the whole game very easily. But if you want 100% completion, be ready to check in daily for the next few years. Super Kirby Clash takes like 3 times as long to beat, because you have to upgrade every piece of equipment twice. I've been checking in since September 2019, and as I write this, I'm still not done. But I'm extremely close. If I get there before the video comes out, I'll put that moment right here. This is the last thing I needed to buy. Invaluable help. You really and truly are something else. I'm not gonna keep on stopping by. It's 900 out of 900. It took 115 hours. And you know, it was worth it. Anyway, pointless completionism aside, these games are fairly harmless and pretty fun, especially to see what crazy bosses you face towards the end. And it's free, kinda. Another reason not to bother with Fighters 2. Uh-oh, Kirby's a ball again. And he golfing? Kirby's Dream Course is the right way to do a Kirby spin-off. It's not just golf. It's got Kirby elements all over, including copy abilities to really change things up. The downside of this game is that it can be pretty damn hard to figure out. If you don't get the nuances down, then this game will kill you. And in terms of golf games, it's not gonna beat out anything modern. But it does have some fun multiplayer. Here's a Japan exclusive for you, Kirby's Superstar Stacker. This is marketed as a remake of the Game Boy game we talked about earlier, but aside from the same puzzle gameplay, everything is different in this game. All the challenge levels are new, there's a single player campaign now with a secret final boss, and local multiplayer that doesn't require 2 copies of the game. This game ranks so much higher because I think it's fully realized as a puzzle game here. This type of game is way more fun competing with other players, and that's what this game is now based around. I could see myself playing a lot of it with friends more so than the golf game or any of these others. It's definitely an underrated one. It's a shame we never got an official US release. Another good example of taking a traditional game and incorporating Kirby in a meaningful way. Kirby's Block Ball has tons of levels, it has copy abilities that make sense, it's got Kirby bosses, and a final world that you gotta unlock by collecting everything. All the aspects of a great Kirby game in Block Ball form. It's still a Game Boy game, it's a little jank, but I'd recommend it over just about any other spin-off out there. Triple Deluxe didn't only give us Kirby Fighters, we also got a very fun rhythm game. DDD's Drum Dash Deluxe is another $7 quick eShop game, but it gives you everything you want. Well, except more. There's only 7 levels total, but they each come with an extra hard variant that's just as fun to try and perfect. I'm just so annoyed that Kirby Fighters got a sequel. Clash got a sequel. How did this not? Kirby has such amazing music and there's just endless potential for more tracks. I think any Kirby fan would have gladly paid $20 or more for a sequel. By the way, this game is dying with the upcoming eShop shutdown. I hope this isn't the last we see of DDDs. DDD. Okay, so we're now at the last of the 3DS sub-games, Kirby's Blowout Blast. This is the deluxe version of 3D Rumble from Robobot, which was technically the first traditional 3D Kirby game. They've really been teasing us a long time. So it's a fast-paced, high-score kind of game for the completionists out there. 5 levels with 4 stages each, bosses, extra hard versions of every level, a big final secret level at the end. Like, this is what you want from a Kirby game. It's a really fun, bite-sized experience, and I'd recommend it to any fan. And it's also going to die with the eShop. So make sure you grab Kirby's blown out ass as soon as you can. Enough of this spin-off crap, it's time to get real. This is when I start making people upset, but I'm doing it. Number 17 is Kirby's Dream Land, the first game. Undeniably charming, adorable, fun, cute little Game Boy game. But it is a little Game Boy game. You can beat this whole thing in like an hour, it's that short. This really serves as a proof of concept for what Kirby could be. There's no copy abilities, Kirby isn't even pink yet. I mean, come on. I'd play this game any day of the week, but I'm not gonna sit here and pretend it's better than all these much bigger and more in-depth titles. Dreamland, I love ya, but this is where it gets hard. So this was a big debate. Which of the Curse games is better? I thought long and hard and decided that Kirby and the Rainbow Curse is number 16. It might have one of the best art styles in Kirby history, and the jazzy soundtrack is wonderful, but what brings the game down from the original is the overall much slower pace. I think being more mellow was like a goal of this game, but I just don't find it as fun as the predecessor. There are these mini challenge levels that are pretty fun but super quick and not all that challenging. The local multiplayer sounds fun, but I never experienced it. The graphics are beautiful, but you don't see them because you gotta play the entire game on the freaking Wii U gamepad. Look at this thing. Look at how gross this screen got over time. It's really a shame. It's also a shame that this is one of very, very few Wii U games that Nintendo didn't bring to Switch, and they probably never will, which makes this another expensive game to get a physical copy of. RIP. Okay, I guess this is no surprise, it's Kirby Canvas Curse. It's a weird game, but it kinda has what you want out of Kirby. Lots of unlockables, metal hunting in each level, copy abilities, which they took out of Rainbow Curse, even harder difficulties that limit time or ink. Both of these games are fun, but the reason they lie comfortably on the mid-tier is that they're just a little bit jank. You never feel completely in control when Kirby's bouncing around everywhere, but it's fun, it's just not as fun as that traditional Kirby goodness, you know? Fun fact, the curse is that Drossia turns Kirby into a ball and that's why you roll him around. But in Rainbow Curse, he just rolls because he wants to. Like his feet are right there, you can see his feet. He just chooses to roll. So I don't know what to do with that information. Kirby is a series of lots of gimmicks, and that's not a bad thing. The best Kirby games are the one with the best gimmicks. And so Kirby Squeak Squad is mid-tier number 14. This one is fine, but it's just not that memorable. Unlockable upgrades to copy abilities wasn't very deeply explored, and neither were the mix abilities, of which there were like 5 total. There's nothing really wrong with this one, it's just fairly generic. But that Squeak Squad theme goes hard. Squeak Squad's gimmick was done better years earlier in Kirby 64, The Crystal Shards. Seeing all the different combos you can pull off makes this game well worth playing, and it's truly a shame they never let you do this again. I do think this suffers from something that most games of this era do. The pacing is way too slow, gameplay-wise. Kirby feels very stiff and everything just takes a little bit longer than previous and future games. Also, a lot of puzzles boil down to just finding the right ability combo, which is sometimes a guessing game, and sometimes it's just annoying to hunt and find the right one. Game's still good, but if there's any game in this series that needs a remake, I would choose this. Here was the start of asking the same question in every generation of consoles. When is Kirby gonna do the whole cool and innovative transition into 3D thing like the other franchises? Little did we know this wouldn't come for over 20 more years. We all love copy abilities, but I've always wondered what it would be like if they made another full-scale Kirby game without them, exclusively focusing on the inhale-exhale mechanic from Dreamland. And then we got Kirby's Epic Yarn. It's basically what I was looking for, boiling Kirby down to its simplest version of itself, which is already very simple. I think there's some value to that. Of course, therein lies the controversy. The game was considered way too easy even for Kirby, but true Kirby fans know that the challenge always comes from collecting everything. No, there's no health bar, but if you get hit, you lose a bunch of money, kinda like Sonic. And you need to finish each level with a certain amount to get that gold medal, and sometimes even unlock more levels. Then you have Extra Epic Yarn, which actually gives you a hard mode with the little devil guy that stalks you and stuff. Plus, they basically re-added copy abilities that people were missing, so there's really not much to complain about here. I guess I vehemently don't care about unlocking furniture to decorate my apartment. Pretty much all of the unlocks in this game are related to that, and I was just never a fan. But Epic Yarn is a wonderful little game, and I won't accept the hate. Extra Epic, I believe, is the very last 3DS game published by Nintendo, so it doubled as a relic of where Kirby arguably felt the most at home, on the small screen. Epic Yarn came during a pretty big gap between mainline Kirby games, so the next year they came back to their traditional style with Kirby's Return to Dreamland. As I stated a second ago, I always felt like the portable Kirby games were better than the console games, but you can't deny what this game brought to the table. A lot of stuff that's iconic about modern Kirby comes from here, but I would definitely call this the new Super Mario Bros. Of Kirby. Gameplay-wise, it just ain't doing anything to change up the formula. The gimmick this time around are the super abilities, and they're kind of all just a big screen wipe attack. Not particularly fun to use. Co-op's fun though. I guess you just expect more from a 2011 game. Remember, at this point we've had Mario 64, Sunshine, Galaxy, Galaxy 2, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword, and this is just another Kirby game. Fun, but we're still waiting on that big jump. This was 11 years ago, by the way. Side note, if this is Return to Dreamland, as in Dreamland 4, where are the animal friends? Those guys made Dreamland 2 and 3. Cutting them out was a sin to me, never forget. Kirby Star Allies gets a lot of hate. I think at this point we've seen the other big Nintendo franchises take an additional leap forward, and here we are with yet another 2D Kirby game. I can only complain about that so much though, because the game itself is still one of the best home console Kirby experiences. It takes a lot of the good things from the previous two titles like sub-games, anniversary celebrations, and more importantly, lore. This gave us more horrifying Kirby lore than any of the entries before it. The free updates that came later gave the game some much needed extra content that I think was slept on by a lot of people because it just came too late. That's a problem with Nintendo in general these days. Plus, they added just about every playable character fans could ask for in those updates. It's a really solid game that I think sits perfectly at the start of the top 10. Some may call me crazy for putting a Game Boy game so high on the list, but Dreamland 2 is where it's at. The first game was the setup, and this was the touchdown. It's got way more levels packed in, the graphics are greatly improved, we have collectibles, and of course, the animal friends were a fantastic addition that really pushed it over the edge. For a platformer, I think this pushed the Game Boy to its absolute limits. And what's really impressive is how it can hold its own even by modern standards. Not to mention this was our introduction to dark matter, which I still believe is one of the most defining moments in the series. While the console Kirby stayed mostly basic, the portable ones sometimes change it up. Kirby and the Amazing Mirror asks, what if Kirby was a Metroidvania? And it's pretty cool for that. It's not the most in-depth Metroidvania, but it kind of feels like what would happen if they made Great Cave Offensive into its own full game. Also bonus points for the Smash copy ability, which is just Kirby's moveset from Smash, but in an actual Kirby game. That's awesome. The multiplayer was way ahead of its time, allowing players to just coexist in the same world, running all around. It's mind-blowing they never brought this back in an online version or something. That would be incredible, which is why Nintendo probably will never do it. Because back in the day, you needed 4 Game Boys, 4 copies, 2 cables, be in the same room, and not move too far from each other. No one did this. Nintendo, I am once again asking for a Kirby party game on home consoles. Oh, but they did make a Kirby party game on home console. One time. And it's one of the most fun local multiplayer experiences I've ever had. Kirby Air Ride. Hey, you either get it or you don't. This isn't just a racing game with Kirby in it. It's got 3 main modes, each with different gameplay, and each mode has this massive list of unlockables that'll make your head spin. The racing is fun and unique. Top right is a cool way to change it up, but it's all about the city trial. Being Kirby's first true 3D experience, being thrown into this tiny open world with randomly generated items and major events, all while being able to find your friends and see what they're up to, oh, it was just so much fun. The only downside, I suppose, is that it doesn't have a lot going for you as a single player, even though I found it very fun to unlock everything. I can't truly explain to you what was so magical about this game if you've never experienced it. All I can do is continually pray for Nintendo to bring it back or to make some kind of new Kirby multiplayer. But I really think Mario Kart and Mario Party might be the sole reason we never got one again. Shameful, Nintendo. Shame on you. This might be a curveball for some people, but I think this is the most underrated Kirby game out there. Kirby Mass Attack. There are 4 things I look for in Kirby: variety, charm, challenging collectibles, and fun unlockables. These top 6 contenders nail it all, and Mass Attack is no exception. This is the best spin-off, because the twist on gameplay is more than just a touchscreen or motion control gimmick. This is how I would expect a 2D Pikmin game would play, and it was light years better than the one we actually got. Most Kirby games hide the challenge towards the end, but this one can be a pretty brutal experience at times, especially if you go for those perfect medals. It's got some of the best sub-games in the series with the RPG and the space shooter. There's just so much fun to be had here. A spin-off game that I really think is only topped by the best main games the series has to offer. Now let's get into the top 5. Finally, Kirby in 3D. You know, cause triple and deluxe. He's in 3D, we did it, yay! But actually, the jumping between layers in the background did lead to some really cool level design here. This is when the Kirby team kicked it into high gear. I don't have much to say about this other than it's almost perfect. This was our follow-up to Return to Dreamland, and basically all of my complaints were fixed here. It's just a great Kirby game. It's also got a weird twist to the villains. It started doing more with the lore, the music is astounding. What brings it down a little is the Hypernova gimmick. It's kinda cool. There were some fun puzzles, but it's weird how little it even shows up in this game. Not the best of the Kirby gimmicks, but also definitely could have been explored more. I wonder if people will be mad that this game's too high. I don't think they should be though, because this is the Kirby game. I'm talking Kirby's Adventure. It may be the second in the series, but it really started it all. If you're wondering how this NES game could be better than some of the modern games that follow, it's hard to explain. This game exudes a mood. It's a special type of mood that can only come from a Kirby game on NES. Like, specifically that. The perfect sprite work that has aged perfectly. The specific sound font that brings us still some of the most iconic tracks in the franchise. These are some of the best graphics on NES by far. I think I might prefer the charm of these sprites over the remake. There's nothing bad about this game at all. The only reason I rank it lower than the top 3 is that those games have much more content in them. You know, there's just more. At this point, I'm grasping at straws to justify which games go on top of the others. They're all great, okay? I love this game. If this video gets 100 views, I'll play through the entire thing with just my feet. Okay, next one. How do we follow that up? I don't know. But this is another very underrated game. Another perfect Kirby game that exudes its own special charm that none of the other games could replicate. Kirby's Dream Land 3. It's the first in the series to go for its own aesthetic with the crayon style. It does everything Adventure did, but in its own way. It's really weird too. This game blessed us with Gooey, the legendary character, and of course it brought back the animal friends for, unfortunately, the last time. I don't know why those guys didn't become a staple in this series. Where this game sticks out the most is the way collectibles work. You don't just grab a cube or an orb, each level has its own gimmick. You meet a strange character and you have to figure out what they want. Play their game, find a special thing in the level, help Samus eradicate the Metroids with your ice beam? Okay, this is the best one. This is the best Kirby game. Except for the next 2. It's not only the classic games that nail their own special mood. In 2017, we were blessed with Kirby Planet Robobot. This game does away with the grassy field world, desert world, ice world trope, and the whole game is just different kinds of techno-themed environments. But it doesn't ever get old. It just locks you into this aesthetic, especially with the game's gimmick, the Robobot. This might sound weird, but this is the closest we've got to animal friends being in modern Kirby. You jump into this, and whatever copy ability you have becomes a whole new thing that changes how you play, and it's lots of fun. There was very little to complain about with Triple Deluxe, but Robobot comes in and says, hey bro, let me just nail everything. It's jam-packed with way more stuff than Adventure or Dreamland 3, plus a lot of challenge for the completionists and the die-hard fans. All that is on top of its most unique trait. This is the most story-driven of all the Kirbys. You find yourself in like a dramatic narrative with checkpoints of dialogue leading up to a pretty dark ending. Which I guess is nothing too new for Kirby. 30 years. 30-ish games. All leading up. I don't know why I'm hyping it up. Everybody knows what it is. It's Superstar. Of course it's Superstar. I debated where I would place some of these entries for hours, but Superstar was pretty much locked in the whole time. Most people would place this as number 1, and I think it's because it nails those 4 aspects of Kirby I talked about earlier. This is a collection of sub-games, each with their own unique and well-implemented gimmicks. More variety than any other. It's got challenge all over. There's an entire game that's just collecting cool stuff. And charm? Oh, it's oozing charm. Each of these sub-games feel like they could be their own full Kirby game easily. They even threw in the entire original Dreamland just for fun. And then it gets remade with Superstar Ultra, adding even more stuff? A whole alternate version of Dreamland that's harder. Helper to Hero is the best arena mode in the series. Meta Knight gets his own big campaign, and do I need to talk about Galactonite? No, I don't. Cause either you get it, or you don't. And I think that's what Kirby ultimately boils down to. There's just something about this series. It's so simple, but it strikes such a chord with so many people. They have a sort of charm that's just, you don't really get it unless you've played not just one, but like a bunch of them, and all the way through, not just beating the last boss, but beating the true last boss, and collecting everything and seeing everything. There's something about it. You could be watching this video and going, dude, I don't know, you just showed 30 games with a pink ball jumping around. What's the big deal? I don't get it. And I can't even really argue against that. It is just a pink ball jumping around, but nothing makes me happier. And we've waited so long to see the pink ball jumping around in 3D. We're finally gonna see what that's like. I think after a video like this, I have to review Forgotten Land on this channel. I have to complete the picture. Like, where does it land on this list? Is it gonna be the best Kirby game ever? I don't know, I'm not gonna say that. I think I just have to do a deep dive, like, review analysis, big video on that game when it comes out. I think I'm gonna do it. Because it's like my most hyped game of the year. Like I said, Elden Ring. If you want to see that video, you can subscribe. You can hit the bell. Ooh, hit the bell. Anyway, I'm out of here.